Have a microphone.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're gonna be on. We're gonna record this also. Yeah. So, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you.
Harmony Village.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Oh, no, good. It's not so nice.
Where is it? Right on Cross Road, down towards where Sid used to be.
Oh, they turned that into a senior facility?
Big, big.
Ah.
When at first it was independent living, so I saw something here I'm driving, so I'm not really looking.
Right.
But it said something about memory care. And that's interesting because they have a cupola right down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to be competing with themselves.
Well,
And then
maybe
right
they're
across the
overfilled.
Building for the boomers coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. The numbers are staggering.
Did you see when they were doing the benefit report breakdown? I got an email about that because I'm on the list. And they were doing the benefit for the victims of, the devastation in Puerto Rico. And the tickets were $1,200. Some fancy of it, which isn't my cup of tea anyway, but that's a lot of money. You get more donations if you charge less, or just ask. That would be many couples or victims, like there's some free. But you pay for that. Well, I figured this one tickets going on with some famous rapper being there and some entertainment. Oh, it was a big. Well, I wouldn't think that. Yeah, I would think benefits to them.
Yeah, I would think that they would donate their time. Usually the artists don't get paid. We hope not.
And the Carolina isn't
Yeah, well, it is a business. But at any rate, well, I want to thank you guys for coming back. And this is the last class. It is Ask the Experts. And so what I wanted to do today is kind of just like run through what the sessions were and see if you guys have any questions. And I also, and if we need to contact Steve Tarta, he is in his office, hooray. So we welcomed our phone call. And so let's just, I'm gonna go to the original presentation and we'll just look at, the overview. And just gonna go to, okay. So the first session was the overview, right? So let's look, so session 2 was MediWide, right? Where we talked about the different kinds of Medicare, and Mark Spira, who was the Medicare broker, was here, and then of course we spoke about Medicaid. So let me ask you, did you achieve your goals in attending this class by seeing the content that was presented? What do you think?
Okay, so great.
Do you have questions that you would like to ask? Because I can contact Mark if you like. We can also arrange for you to get his contact information to you so you can ask him directly. And we can also reference I have his presentation also, which incidentally, if you guys did not get it, it's available on the closed Facebook group. And if you want me to email it to you, let me know, because I can make all the files available. They're on Dropbox, and I can send you a link, and you can download whatever of the course materials you want to access. We can make available to you as well.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes. I have a question on the Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mark said that what you pay for your Part B is based on your income.
Mm-hmm.
2 years prior.
Yes.
Is there any way to find out what the income has to be in order to have what your monthly payment is higher or or is there a chart? of any
Like a
sort?
threshold?
Yeah, like a threshold.
I don't know, but I'll find out.
Oh, okay.
So somebody with 85, that 85,000.
What's
And there's,
couple.
and then there's 2 tiers.
There's 3 tiers, okay.
If you don't already have one, yeah, a social security online account for yourself,
Okay.
just go to ssa.gov.
Antoinette.
If you don't have an online access, everyone, any age, can set up a social security account online. So if you go to ssa.gov, you can have access to your information, your records. It'll tell me, like me, I'm still working, but I can get the projected estimate of what my social security will be when I retire. I can continue with this lease, change of address. You can do a lot of different things on the website, which will save you a lot of time in the application. Because I've sat there with elderly people calling Social Security and sitting on the phone on hold for 45 minutes to an hour. And I've gone to Social Security and sat there for 4 hours. So anything you can do online is much easier and it makes your life a lot simpler.
Yeah. So here's the Social Security website, and these are all the information, and you can set up your account here. And hold on, let me just I just want to switch this over so people who see the recording will know what I'm pointing to. All right, so we want the application window. Share.
Make sure they properly represent your income.
Yeah. So, and if you go into My Social Security, you set up an account, and you will be able to see things like, you know, what your entitlement is. Entitlement, love that word. But what your benefit is, and things of that nature. So you can check that information there. You can generate your statement and all that good stuff. So that's a really great place to start. You're very welcome. Okay.
They call it Irma. Or not call it
Irma? Okay. Oh, stop sharing.
The government loves acronyms.
They do. So, okay. All right. So, any other Medicare questions? Okay. Do we have any Medicaid questions? Because Antoniette is a wealth of information, and I think we started to talk a little bit about how even if you're not at the point of needing Medicaid, how it might be a good idea to start pulling the paperwork together. Because as Antoniette can tell you, pulling together 5 years worth of financial statements can be a real bear. And
Anyone that I just believe now a term for, whose family has decided not to do anything for him because of past things. And I will tell you, he at one time was a very wealthy man. And,
yes.
he spent his money foolishly and lived large. But
Had a thing for the ladies, did he not?
he absolutely did.
Okay.
Ladies can find They can, all kinds of wild things. But he, in looking at his checking statements, which I just got access to online yesterday, I almost had a heart attack because there were huge sums of money coming in and going out. Great. Now I have to find out the source of the deposits, get copies of all these checks. I have no idea. I did find 2 IRAs. So I invested those. The forensic accounting work is going to be extensive with him. I'm going to do foot traffic, to various banks, institutions, and so on and so forth, to try to piece together his life with at least the past 10 so that I can get my benefits.
Now, do you have to send the power of attorney to each individual institution you deal with? You send a copy?
Took Morgan Stanley 10 days to approve the
Oh, and incidentally, each financial institution has their own power of attorney form. So, because they are covering their butts. So that's something else to be cognizant of. When you go to deal with any financial institution, they will likely ask you to fill out another power of attorney form. In addition
Morgan
to.
asked me for an attestation, is an affidavit,
Mhm.
stating that the power of attorney was still in effect when it was only 7 days old. He said, I just did this. Oh, just you signing it and get it.
It was a durable power of attorney?
Yeah, I have a 15-page power of attorney. It has all the account numbers we know, the social security number, his date of birth, where he's lived in the past 5 years. It's very comprehensive. And so everything should be covered. Where we think his pensions are coming from, God knows what else they might be.
Do you know of anywhere where there's a list of the types, and I have two questions, like a list of the types of things you should start organizing ahead of time, and how far in advance should you start? Is it 6 months before you think they're going to be Medicaid eligible?
It depends where they are. So suppose your parents are still currently living in their home, but they're starting to become frail. I would say at least get the last 3 years to 4 years of data together for them. A rule of thumb that I give clients is around $100,000. So if they have more than $100,000, as they're spending it, just be cognizant that you're going to start
And that's the threshold.
Yeah.
Once they hit that.
Yeah.
Because I need to get their data, and sometimes it's a couple, and then it goes twice as fast. So,
Or if they're both in.
yeah, like I have a couple right now, they're down to 70,000 maybe. So while it sounds like a lot of money, they're both in a nursing home together. They just went into the nursing home, and it's really only a matter of January.
Right.
To step down.
Right.
So,
And the thing you have to realize is that when it comes time to decide on a place for your loved one's stay, it's better to walk in with a chunk of cash and be able to say to the facility, we want to privately pay. We have enough for this, we have this much. How many months can we get? Well, we apply for Medicaid. And they will work with you, right? Because they want the beds filled. They like Medicaid because they know they're going to get paid, but they really like private pay because it's more than Medicaid will pay. So you don't want to wait until you're down to the last $2,000 because that's the danger zone. That's when the family has to come up with extra resources of their own to pay for the loved ones. $100,000 window is a good place to start working on it because you have the leverage to be able to negotiate a deal with a nice facility, where you wouldn't feel bad visiting your loved one. Because let's face it, no matter where anybody goes, they're not going to love it because it ain't home. It's a home, not their home. So they're not going to love it. But at least if you go to some place that's nice, that's clean, that has a good reputation, where you know your loved one is going to get the right kind of care. We had a client who was in a rehab. They slid him into their nursing home, and we got involved because Antoniette already knew the reputation of this place, as did Eileen. And we were too late to prevent him getting transferred, but we were not too late to intervene and get him the hell out of there. Because this man, once he was in that place, he was not getting bathed. He was not being fed. The client actually had somebody videoing on the QT and had video of her father being served his breakfast tray at 6:30 in the morning, and by 12:30 it hadn't been touched. And this was a man who could not feed himself. So the kinds of differences I'm talking about, okay, are the differences between a place where your loved one will get the care that they need and deserve or a place where they will just be another head in a bed, another number. And this is what we want to prevent. Okay? Yes.
100,000 is total assets.
It's, with Medicaid, it's kind of hard to give definitive answers sometimes because everybody's situation is unique. Say your parents or mother live in their home and they want to stay in their home, even on Medicaid, then that house doesn't count. But if they were to go to a facility where you have to look at the house, so yes, in that case, the house counts. But if they're staying in their home and hoping to have Medicaid in-home benefits, then the house doesn't count.
And then if there's a couple and one is healthy and one is not, then the healthy one can keep the house. And they can have a car. And they can have a certain amount of assets. So that's a factor also.
Does it matter how nice the car is? Like, can you go out and get a Lamborghini?
I've had people go down to New York State.
Like a Tesla or really?
Yeah. Yeah.
You can
It's
have a car. So say dad goes to the nursing home, and I've known people that have done this. They have a lot of money to spend down. And of course, and my feeling is the same, always. Protect the healthy spouse. We will get care for the spouse that needs help. But we also need to financially protect the healthy spouse because he or she is going to remain in the home and is healthy and could be there for quite a long time. So you don't want to impoverish the healthy spouse, but you do need to get the care for the spouse that needs assistance. So yes, I always tell them, if you have an older car, buy a newer car. You know?
And if somebody's going to stay in the house and you want to do something with your assets, put the assets into the house. Put it into upgrading the house.
If you sell a mortgage, you can pay off the mortgage on the house. You can do improvements on the house.
Put in ramps. You know, get a stair lift. You know, those kinds of things. That
because when you apply for Medicaid, say you have a couple that has $500,000, the healthy spouse can include $120,000. You have to spend the remaining balance of their money. Now, that money can be spent on a new car, on a home improvement, that kind of thing, plus care. But if you put improvements into the home and things like that, you're actually spending down according to the guidelines, but you're also assisting the healthy spouse.
And yeah, so that's what Medicaid's looking for. So it's much smarter to do that than to like say, well, I'm going to give my money away to my kids. That's a really bad idea. Okay? Because while it would be nice, the thing is that if you go into a home and then Medicaid says, wait, where did these thousands of dollars go? Oh, I gave it to my kids. So you don't want to put them in that position. So that's why, and I work with an estate attorney who says if you love somebody, don't give them anything. Because it can come back to bite them.
Towards the end of their life.
Right, well, but what you can do is you can make sure that the money is distributed to them at some point, but don't just give it to them. All right, that's the difference. Within the state plan, you want to make sure that you talk to a qualified attorney, someone who knows what they're doing, who takes a holistic view of you and your family and your needs. And then you take the assets and you position them where they're going to do the most good. And, you know, I can't stress this enough. There are a lot of people who think, you're advocating cheating the government. And when people say that to me, I really want to strangle them. Because they've never seen anyone, an adult child, who's run through their savings to help save their parent. They've never seen someone who's given up their job and maybe their marriage, gone to go live with a parent. And this was one that just blew my mind. This woman went to go live with her mom. Her siblings had nothing to do with the caregiving. They were in another state that they didn't give her to them. So this daughter gave up her life as she knew it. She lived with the mom. She saw her through to give her a good death. And when the mother was gone, all this child had was the house. The siblings descended, sold the house out from under her, and left her homeless. Do you think mom wanted that? But she didn't state it. There wasn't I don't even know if there was a will. Okay, and this was somebody I met through my caregiving. But you would think that this is like an aberration, but I am here to tell you there are a lot of really rotten people out there. And if you're going to give up your life to care give a loved one, then there's a lot of stuff that you got to do to protect yourself and them. And this is why I do this, because there's all kinds of stuff. You wouldn't think in a million years that people could be that nasty, that lousy to each other. But when there's money involved,
I can't tell you this year alone the horror stories of clients and people that call me. It's alarming how even like I have brothers and sisters, step moms, and everything that's the two. So, how do people sleep at night? How do they live with themselves, Jane? You know, you have 3 children, and as a parent, you want all your children to be taken care of if you're going to leave money behind for them. Not 2 out of 3 or 1 out of 3. I mean, it doesn't work that way. Or, you know, if one child does sacrifice their life to help you and take care of you for a number of years, you would hope. A friend of mine did, she had a house to the daughter who took care of her. She died, the son, who was never around, living out of state, showed up. And she said, "What's his mom?" And that created issues for 10 years. With cancers and all kinds of things. So
Sounds like that other one, they could contest that. You know, like the child that was left out could contest that and say, "Hey, what about me?"
right? And that's why.
But that's expensive.
But it's you know what?
I know someone who she and her sister was suing her 2 brothers. Because the 2 brothers set everything up so they got everything, and the 2 sisters got nothing. And we're talking pretty big money.
You can't keep your hand in sand. And you know, this is just right, it's really important to spell it out. You know, you think, all right, well, I got 2 kids, everything gets split evenly, right? You know, there's all kinds of stuff that happens, and you don't want to take those things for granted. And while it seems, you know, you think it's expensive to see an attorney, it's a lot more expensive not to, right? And honestly, if you work with our attorneys, you're going to do very well. Because all the people that we work with, first of all, they're extremely ethical. They really care. They've been there. They all have wonderful stories that they would be glad to share with you. And when you come in as a member of Grand Family Planning, they will give you a package price, and it's going to be significantly less than it would be for someone coming in off the street. Because we work together on this. So you know, so just to kind of give you an idea of how that works. Generally, if somebody is interested in becoming a Grand Family Planning client, they meet with me first, and I find out what's going on in your family, who's in there, who do you need, you know, what's been done, what are you maybe overlooking. And you know, I'm trying to find, you know, what keeps you up at night, what bothers you, what kinds of issues have occurred to you. And then, once I've got all that data, go back to my partners, go to Antoniette, go to Eileen, I go to Steve, I go to the partners who I think will be a really good fit for the family, and I say, okay, this is what I see when you say. And that way, and I don't give them the names, all right? So your privacy is protected until such time as you say, okay, yes, let's do this. All right, so just so you know, we're HIPAA compliant and we respect everybody's privacy. So once we come up with a plan and a set of goals, I create a needs analysis, go over it with each client, every step. this is what you see, this is what we see. And these are the ways that we suggest to address them in this order, right? And if you're ready to take action, then you start making appointments. And then the person you're going to see first is going to say, okay, the case that we talked about, number 17779, is this person, and they're going to come in and they're going to talk to you about your situation. And you will know before you walk into the next person's office what their fee is going to be. So there's none of this sticker shock. Because I know I have seen a number of estate attorneys in my time, and every time I walk in, it's like, oh crap, what's this going to cost me? So I don't want anybody to have that experience.
I actually had someone say to me a couple weeks ago that she saw an attorney and she said, he said $20,000 and I heard nothing after that. I said, how long were you in his office? She said, an hour and a half. I said, so, because the whole time, $20,000 was going in my head and I couldn't imagine.
What does that buy you?
Well, in her case, it would have been a Medicaid application. And, I mean,
What kind of meeting?
unfortunately, this is a situation, a younger woman, older man. He's got violent dementia. And his college fund has now become part of their total assets because dad's name is on the account. So they have a real problem on their hands. They own the house outright, God bless them, and a home mortgage. She did buy a new car, but now she needs to move the rest of that money into an annuity so that it can protect her son, because his college fund of $80,000 is part of their assets. So
Things you wouldn't think of. This is why. All right. So let's go forward to session 3, and that was the estate planning. So we might as well just go ahead and look at that. Okay. So session 3. Okay. So that was estate planning. All right. So we've already got a good start on the questions and that. Do you guys have other questions as regards estate planning about the healthcare proxy, the POA, wills, trusts, any of that?
it's something really beneficial to everyone. How old should you be when you start thinking about estate planning?
Great question. Well, I say if you're having the realization that you have an estate, then you should have a conversation. I say that anybody over the age of 18 needs an advocate, right? Because as soon as you turn 18, you're liberated, and you need to say something in writing, in a legal instrument that says, I want my mom or my dad or whoever to be able to speak for me if I get sick. Because if they land in the emergency room and they haven't done that, then no one can legally speak to anyone else for that. Would you want to be an 18-year-old kid alone and unable to have your parent advocate for you? That's a really scary prospect, right? So HIPAA release or a healthcare proxy, 18, got to be done. And as far as long-term care planning, I would say if you're 50 and you haven't thought about it, then you really should. That's you're halfway through life, one way or another. Right?
Is a healthcare proxy the same as a healthcare directive?
Yeah. Great question. Okay, so the healthcare proxy is saying who you're appointing to speak for you. Okay? The advanced directive is the living will. It describes the circumstances around the kinds of things that can happen to you.
Do not necessitate.
All that stuff. If I'm in a persistent vegetative state, pull the plug. Or if I'm in a persistent vegetative state, keep me alive forever until they figure out how to fix me. There are people like that. Walt Disney, cryogenic head. Yeah, so, but you need to say it. Because if you don't, then you're putting your future in the hands of strangers who don't know you, right? And depending on what the philosophy is of the doctor who's treating you, of the hospital that you're at, and what kind of insurance you have. I mean, a lot of places, if they see if you've got good insurance, they're like, yeah, they're going to pile on the services and whether you need them or not. And this is not to disparage hospitals or doctors, okay? But it does happen, sadly. So, but when you have stuff in writing, it goes a really long way. I will share with you, my dad had vascular dementia. And he had several other cross-complicated illnesses. But my father, before he got sick, was an extremely funny, sharp, smart guy. And he really loved being the life of the party, right? Well, when he got vascular dementia, he would have these windows of lucidity where he knew just how much trouble he was in. And it was horrible, and he did not want to live. He was very, very clear. I don't want to live. Let me die. I had enough. He was hallucinating constantly, so when he was up and about, all he wanted to do was go back to bed because it was so confusing for him to try to relate to people. And it was humiliating because he didn't feel like he was himself. And it was so much energy for him to pull himself together. But my brother and I were on the same page. We had all of his paperwork, we had his healthcare proxy, we had his advanced directives, we had his DNR. And so when the time came and he was ready to go, they let him go. My father had congestive heart failure, and generally when you have congestive heart failure, they don't want to give you Demerol or opiates because it suppresses the breathing. But because my father was where he was at, he was pulling his tubes out. And they gave him Demerol. And they basically let him go to sleep. Because that's what he wanted. So I'm so grateful to that hospital because they allowed him to have the most dignified possible exit. If we didn't have all that in place and we didn't know all that, we would not have been able to achieve that. And he might have gone on for months in that state with that level of misery. So that is something that I would never want anybody to have to go through unnecessarily. It's a terrible, terrible thing. So this is why, again, it's so important. Make your wishes known. Appoint an advocate.
So everybody needs, I guess, a will, a healthcare proxy,
Yes.
a DNR.
Not necessarily a DNR. That's part of your living will. The living will and advanced directives are pretty much the same thing. Yeah, right. The
Power of attorney.
The power of attorney, and the power of attorney, the difference in power of attorney is that your power of attorney can make financial decisions for you, can sign checks, can do the financial stuff for you.
Some people also, and I've seen this, have a real estate. There is a separate power of attorney for you to do real estate transactions. And I have a client where, long story short, he was disabled, bipolar, already 64 years old. The house was in his name and his mom's name, and she went into the nursing home. So, needless to say, they had reverse mortgage with Liz. It was kind of self because mom was going to nursing home, she wasn't coming out. So, he actually had a real estate power of attorney done, so that transition, sale, transfer, home and sale. Completely different entity, very seamless and smooth. Because people think the power of attorneys, you can get them from LegalZoom and all this. I will tell you for a fact, they don't fly. They don't work in a lot of cases. I have clients who cannot get access to retirement because kids. They can't get access to pension information. They cannot open a trust. And when you go on Medicaid, you may need to set up a trust account. When we go on Medicaid, we look at the income. If your income is over 2,000, now it's 2,250 a month gross. You have to go to the bank. You have to set up a qualified income trust. If your power of attorney doesn't say you can set up a trust, you can't set up a account. So people think that power of attorney is something simple that you can get online. It's not. And it's very important to get good things on a really good attorney.
And the trust part. Creating trusts is an extremely valuable tool. And I can't emphasize that enough. And knowing which kind of trust to implement in your particular case, that alone is worth its weight in gold.
Steve was talking about revocable versus not irrevocable.
Yes, revocable versus irrevocable. The revocable means that you can take it back any time. And that's a living trust, which enables you to avoid probate. Because you're saying to Uncle Sam, I know what I want, and this is what I want, so stay at it, right? But it also means that you can take stuff out of it any time. You set it up that way, then it's not protected from anything. The irrevocable trust is the stuff that Medicaid can't touch. Because you said, I am taking this out of my name, taking it off of my table forever. I'm okay with letting this go. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have access to it. It just means you no longer have direct access to it, which also means that Medicaid doesn't get the clause in it. So now there is a timetable to it, but it's by implementing these techniques, you can protect more of your assets for later on. Makes sense? Yes.
You have an irrevocable trust. And you, for example, if you have an irrevocable trust, you were someone to have, was underrated right now, but not have access to it, let's say they you still own those assets before that person reaches 21?
The trust owns it. And there must be a trustee who is over the age of majority. So the minor, so the way the trust works is that the trust is an entity. It's like a corporation. It's a piece of paper that says, "Hello, I am a container." Okay, with rules, right? And the container can hold assets that can be distributed to the minor at some point, but you also need to have somebody called a trustee, right? So you would be the grantor, you're the person who's creating the trust, okay? But then you have a trustee who's the manager that you hire to make sure that your trust goes the way it's supposed to go. And you just, okay, makes sense? You're welcome. Any other questions about the legal stuff? Okay, we'll move along. I also want to see if there's anybody coming from Facebook. Live Facebook chat. See if anybody's there. Oh, Steve. Thanks, Steve.
We miss him. You were here.
Okay. So, all right. So that was Steve and me. And okay. Session 4, getting organized. How'd you like that session? That was an eye-opener, wasn't it? So, all right. So we had Miri and Beth and Maria Elena, and before at the beginning of class, Winnie was sharing with me that she actually started getting rid of some stuff. And that really makes me feel good because, you know, how did you feel like after you started doing that? Was it a good feeling?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's liberating, right? Because, you know, we get so, you know, we get so amped up about stuff. We're such a commercial society, we're such a materialistic society, right? And we just revalue our things. And when we're kids, it's like, oh, I gotta have that car. Oh, I gotta have that house. Oh, I gotta have that couch. And as you get older, I was like, what was I so revved up about, right? It's just stuff.
It's not going to be with pleasure or traits.
Yes. I'm at that point where I'm thinking, you know, the kids are, one's going to graduate next year from UNT, the other one just started college. It's just me when they're gone, so there's so much stuff in my house.
And I agree. I forget who. I guess it was Miri.
Uh-huh.
No, wait, no. That was Maria.
Maria.
The kids don't want the stuff because we have 3 kids, and I've been saving stuff for years, and the kids can use it when they go out. It's like, yeah, you know, no, I'm good.
Yeah, they really don't want this
Yeah.
stuff.
Oh, my mother forced a bunch of stuff on me. She kept my Easy Bake Oven
Oh my God.
and my Chatty Cathy. Now, I use the crap out of my toys, okay? And my Easy Bake Oven, she actually put a rocker switch on the cord so I could turn it on and off without pulling out the plug. And that she thought that this thing had any value to me or like anybody in the world. And then I had a Chatty Cathy that was so beat up that it didn't have a ring anymore. It had a bobby pin hanging from the cord because the ring broke. And I used the hell out of my toys. And she saved them. Now, I didn't have kids, so what am I going to do with this stuff? And even if I had kids, why would my kid want this beat up old Chatty Cathy? But she couldn't bring herself to get rid of it. So she gave it to me to dispose of.
That was my question. Did you throw it out?
It's a perfect picture.
No, it was so ugly, it was like heartbreaking. And it had hair missing, you know, I mean, it was really.
It represents a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really, when I first got it, loved it, and I used the hell out of it. I really used my toys. And I took pretty good care of them, but you know, there's very little of that. So, yeah, and the really big epiphany for me was when I cleaned out my parents' apartment. I almost became a Zen Buddhist after that. I was like, I don't want anything anymore. I don't want any stuff. I used to go to trade shows, you know, and you know, they have all this like swag that you pick up. You're like, oh, look at this. This is so. I don't bring home anything anymore. And I'll bring home a business card, you know, and look at the stuff online and then get rid of the business card because I just don't want the stuff anymore. I don't want it. It weighs me down. Like I said a few years ago, I couldn't breathe in it. And once we got all that stuff out of there, and I had, you know, but I love my closet. It's like it's all organized with baskets and stuff. And it's really cool, and I can find stuff, and it's like, it's so nice. I do still have piles of stuff, you know, my media stuff, but I know I'm really good about getting rid of it. I shred stuff periodically, you know, I have a rhythm, but I don't get that like overwhelming. And it's just, you know, it's so important to like, keep on top of that stuff. And I kept saying to myself, there were a couple of like New Year's where I said, I'm going to clean my office, and I get started, and I just like stall out. And finally, like, you know, 2 years ago, I said, that's it, I'm hiring somebody. I can't do this anymore. And it was the best decision I made.
I'm buying a place with
Oh, yeah?
well, partly from the business, but also from other stuff, their kids, me, my deceased husband. You know, it's like there's so much paper that I'm afraid to get rid of. And I was in an attorney's office one day, and I had my appointment there, and he scanned, his paralegal scanned like this massive stack. In a few minutes, he emailed everything to me, and I was like, I need that. You know, it's expensive. Yeah, and it does both sides at once. Because I need this, so I've been saving for it, so next week I'm going to get my scale. Good for you. And then I'm gonna organize my personal stuff first.
What are they running, 400 or 500? Or more than that? But it saves you a lot of time.
Oh, think about the space in a house, small house, space, the clutter, because when you're looking through files, and I learned to appreciate the value of electronic paperwork when I did an application for someone, and the daughter gave me all these statements, and people, some that were missing. And I called her, she was in town, and I called her, and I said, I need this statement from this account, and I said, oh, sure, I'm going to see you in 5 minutes. She said, I scanned all of the, it has a lot of accounts. Boom, 5 minutes I get it. She
And the
had it.
scanner sorts it too? Like
I don't know.
Well,
That's why I have
sounds
to do
like
an
it might.
investigation next week.
The thing about a scanned document, you can, the software does what's called optical character recognition. You ever seen OCR? That's optical character recognition. So you scan it, so it's a picture. But the software is smart enough to recognize the character shapes, and it can turn that scan into searchable text.
Can you scan?
Most. And if you get, as long as it's a good quality scan, if you have Adobe Acrobat, okay, which is a piece of software you can buy, the free reader doesn't do it, I don't think. But the Acrobat, the software that you purchase, does what's called OCR, optical character recognition. And a lot of the scanners come with software that does OCR as well. That's been available for a long time. So yeah, and that's a great
It's
point.
just I have a scanner on the printer, but this is a dedicated small unit.
I'll tell you what, and this is something else that's really interesting. I have a piece of, I have an app on my phone. It's called Camcard. It's free. And what it does is it allows you to scan business cards. And it reads the text on the business card, so it allows you to save that searchable text in your database.
It's not just a picture.
Yeah, and it's free, by the way.
Camcard.
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 CAMCARD. And it has it also has there's a website as well. So once you save it here and you have the accounts on the website, the data is updated to the website also. So you can go in, and if it makes a mistake, because sometimes it misreads something, you can edit it on the phone too, but it's a lot easier, I find, to edit on the desktop. Yeah, and the application has gotten so good. I mean, when I first started using it, it was like, it's okay. But now it's like, it's really good. It recognizes the shape of the business card, as long as it's like a normal, 3.5 by 2 business. A standard business card size. It recognizes the shape. It squares it up. It focuses the camera. It takes the shot, and then it reads it. It's really awesome. I love this. It's
And you go with your things on the desk, which pulls out.
Uh-huh.
They're full of business.
Oh yeah, I had that.
I need to get that.
I had that, yeah, and it's free. So I now when I go to a lot of networking events, I meet a lot of professionals, and I'll come home with a handful of business cards, and I just, instead of keeping the business cards, I just scan them on my phone. And the nice thing is that because you also still have the picture of it, if it makes a mistake, you can look at the picture and get the correct information. And it does a really nice job of like pulling out the cell phone number or the address, And I mean, if somebody uses like a really a freaky deaky font, then it might not interpret it very well. But you still have the picture of the card, so you can still figure it out. So I really like it. And optical character recognition is really fun. And another way to clear your
something to
clutter.
replace sticky notes. They're my downfall everywhere.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, I have like several Evernote and several other apps on my phone.
Yeah.
I start it on a file, you know, I'll notice something.
Well, the Mac operating system does still have stickies, I believe. Yeah. Stickies are nice. Okay, so moving along. Session 5, to move or not to move. Was this a good session? I know you used give you some food for thought about, you know, I really thought it was great when, for me personally, I needed to hear this too, because, you know, as much as you know, sometimes you forget stuff or you don't think about it. The idea that, you know, everybody feels like they've got to make their home perfect before they sell it. And sometimes it's better to just leave it and take a little bit off the price, because the person's going to come in and make the house their own anyway, right? And when my husband and I had a house in Little Ferry, it was a little cape, and when we bought it, the previous owners hadn't done anything to it. I mean, this house it needed a lot of TLC. And my husband and I did a lot to it to make it nice. And we were there for 10 years. And when we put it on the market, we were having a tough time finding people to buy the house. Because it was so us. And finally, you know, I done the kitchen. We did the downstairs bath. And we dormered out the upstairs and put in a second bath. So actually, we did the upstairs bathroom first. So when we were demolishing the downstairs, we had a bathroom to use, right? So, and we made it for us. So when people come to look at it, they were like, you know, I had very like bold colors. I like color. So my living room was like candy cane red, and my bedroom was this like really like relaxing blue, and you know. So and when the new people came in, the mom came in and she saw my kitchen and went, she loved my kitchen, and I loved it. But she really, that was like the selling point for her, and she's like, "We'll see you move." So we had a pool, and it was an above ground pool, and we told them that if they needed help opening the pool in the summer, we would come back. So they called us and they said, "Would you help us?" And we said, "Sure." And we went down, and we walked into the house, and they had painted all the walls.
Throughout the house.
The entire house, white walls. And they pretty much couldn't do anything to the kitchen because it was all like cabinets and tile, but it was just like, you know, they're going to make it what they want it to be. You know, so, you know, and that's the thing, you know, once you sell the house, it's not yours anymore. You know, it's like you have your memories, you know, you have the satisfaction of knowing that you lived there and you made a life there, and now it's somebody else. So, but it's hard to wrap it up, you know. So it's good to have to know that you know, those kinds of things, because we think, you know, to give the house the right appeal, to give it the right, you know, to get the right price for it, you know, you have to do certain things. And yes, there are things you do have to do. You've got a septic system, it's got to be up to code, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But as far as like major renovations, you don't want to do something that's gonna, you know, like if you're gonna like put your taste on it, it could be a problem for the next guy. So sometimes it's better to leave them a blank canvas. Yeah. Well, you know, paint is not the big thing, but it's the appliances, it's the tile, it's the cabinet selections, those kinds of things. They're expensive and it's hard to change. So you want to go easy on that kind of stuff. And as far as
easy on the cherry pick.
Yeah.
As we heard last week.
Yeah, I mean the lighter stuff definitely does better. Right now, but that's taste, you know. And as far as the kinds of living situations, you guys get the gradations. It's like, first you live at home, right? And life is kind of getting more difficult, so what do you do? Right? So it may be practical to stay in your home with a few minor modifications, or with some assistive devices. That can work. But when you're in a situation where structurally the environment doesn't work, then maybe it's time to look at something else. I have a client there, they have a home where, to get into the house, you got to go down a flight of stairs, then you go up, and then you go up another flight of stairs, come into the main level, and then there's another flight of stairs upstairs. And mom can't do stairs. Will not move. Now, dad is still able, so he runs up and down the stairs, but he's in his 80s. How long is this going to last? So, I've had these conversations with the family. I've talked to them about, alternatives, but, until somebody's ready, until they see it, they're not going to change. So what would be the next step? Excuse me. If your home is no longer appropriate. Well, you can move to an apartment that's on one floor. That's a sensible thing. You can bring in people to help. And sometimes the bringing in people can be a cost-effective solution, because there are people that you can hire. But I can't stress this strongly enough. When you're at the point of bringing people into your home, you want to make sure that they are background checked, they're certified, excuse me, and that they know how to document what they're doing for you. Why is that important? Because when the time comes for Medicaid, should it come, you want to have a complete document trail of every service that's been performed for you, so that when you apply for Medicaid, you can show where that money went and why you hired that person and what they did for you. That's extremely important, and this is something that too many people don't think of. Excuse me. So it's extremely important when you contract with somebody to do stuff for you. A lot of people, they'll go down and they'll look for somebody on Craigslist, or they'll find somebody through the church, or whatever the situation may be, and find somebody who will work for them inexpensively. Problem with that thinking is that they may not know how to document their time in a format that Medicaid will find compliant, and that's really important. You may be paying them less money over time, but you're still paying them money. And if you can't document where it went, you're going to have a problem with Medicaid. And then there are people out there who are unscrupulous. There are people who will work cheaply, but when you're not looking, they're going through your stuff. Not a good thing. So, and you also want to make sure that you have somebody overseeing them. There should always be someone you can go to. So if you're having a thought that maybe they're not behaving the way they should, that you can go to somebody and say, hey, I have my suspicions about this person, and help me out here.
Do you ever recommend cameras inside the home?
It's not a bad idea, and actually we know somebody who does that. So, it can't hurt.
Even if they're not on, if they think they're on.
Yeah.
Might act as a deterrent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you say to somebody, by the way, we have closed circuit cameras here, so just full disclosure, you should know. And and it does affect people's behavior. Now, going to the next level, assisted living. Something that is really important for families to know is that the treatment that somebody gets in an assisted living facility is, of course, partially the facility itself and how it's managed and the people who are there. Absolutely. But if you have somebody looking in on you, if you have family members who pop in, you are going to be taken care of much, much better than someone who is just left. Okay? That's just the way it is, and I've spoken to lots and lots of care providers, and they've confirmed. It's human nature. And when I used to go and pop in on my mom, they were happy to see me, and I was happy to see them, and I was happy to see that my mom was getting the right care. And that, when they would say to me, you have no idea how many of these people here have nobody looking at them. Absolutely, absolutely. So
And it's like that moment. Family that's always there, and they remember.
How am I going to direct my time? I'm going to go to the person that coming in.
And that's the truth, and that's the way it is. So, and assisted living is more generally for more independent people who need some level of assistance, and there's usually stratas, where you can engage them through different levels of service, which cost more. So, and there are also another type of communities that continuing care community, which is actually can be a really good deal for some people, where you start off independent and you can buy or rent a place, and as time goes on and your needs change, they add on, and they're able to take care of your escalating needs as you age. So those are really great to look into also. Next up would be group home. And group home is for people who need some kind of assistance. Sometimes it's memory care. A lot of times it's just people who need extra help with their activities of daily living. They need help with bathing. By the way, if you don't, does everybody get what activities of daily living are? Okay. You'll hear the expression ADLs, activities of daily living, and those are a set of activities that you should be able to do in order to conduct an independent life. And when you activate a long-term care benefit, like long-term care insurance or riders or Medicaid, they look at how many of the activities of daily living you need help with. And so if you want to visualize what ADLs are, I look at it as what you do when you get out of bed in the morning, right? So the first thing you basically do, can you get up and get out of bed? Can you go to the bathroom? Can you make yourself breakfast? Can you bathe yourself? Can you get to the toilet? And can you get dressed? So, and then can you transfer? Can you travel? Okay? So those are your activities of daily living. And if you have trouble with any of those, then you may need what's called custodial care. Okay? So you have trouble getting to the bathroom, you have trouble getting dressed, you have trouble bathing, you have trouble feeding yourself, cooking for yourself, any of those things. Those require custodial care. And custodial care is what Medicare does not. Okay? Medicare does not cover custodial. So that's why it's really important to understand what those ADLs are, because Medicare won't pay for any of that. It's like, well, we're sorry you're having a problem, but that's not skilled nursing, right? What Medicare pays for is the medical stuff, okay? And that's another big difference with Medicaid. Medicaid will pay for the custodial stuff if you have a medical necessity and a financial necessity. So it's got those two components.
So you're saying that your inability to do ADLs is not considered a medical necessity?
That's why you need to know. A lot of people think that. That's a misconception. Medicare does not.
What would be considered a medical?
Okay, you need help with a feeding tube. You need help with any like external appliances, infusions, kidney dialysis, blood work. That's minimum. But
In-home.
Yep. That stuff Medicare does pay for. Now, ambulance, that's another thing. Say you're having trouble with transport. If you can sit up in a chair and you get an ambulance to take you someplace, you're paying for that. If you're on a gurney and you can't move, Medicare will pay for it. So, same vehicle, but you're in different postures. Yeah. So, and those are those are what little distinctions you need to know. Medicare will pay for, if you're in the hospital for 3 nights, Medicare will pay for rehab. Okay, skilled nursing and physical therapy, and occupational therapy, up to 100. It's 90 days is the basic benefit, and then under certain circumstances, it's 100 days. So, but again, it's got to be medical. Head spinning yet? Okay. So the last kind of facility is the nursing home, and the nursing home. The idea behind the nursing home is that you need medical and custodial care. Okay, and it's so that you're in an environment where you get 24/7. And so everybody doesn't necessarily need a nursing home, but if there's a medical necessity and a financial necessity, then whether they need the nursing home or not, that's probably where they're going. So that's something to think about. So one of the things that I'd like you to take away from this is that with adequate planning, you can control this. Okay? You don't have to free fall into any one particular situation. Okay? By planning for what you want, we can help you to achieve what you want for as long as you want. It's doable, but it takes some time. You can't wait until a crisis. It's really important to do it while you're healthy.
And I'll speak louder so you can hear me. To get into a Class A, and I know everybody has a different definition of what, like a top tier nursing home,
Mm-hmm.
how many months of self-pay do you think they're looking for? And I know it's going to vary by...
The official response to that a lot of nursing homes will give you is 18 months to 2 years. But that's really not a practical matter for most people because the cost of those nursing homes, which tend to be very good, is about $15,000 a month. The average nursing home in Bergen County is about 11 to 13. Now, if you go down to Tom's River, you can get a nursing home for $8,900 a month. So there's a big difference regionally as well, because it's real estate. If you consider the fact that these facilities are all real estate, that should give you a little bit of an indication as to the variances you can expect across the state. But they will give you the official word as 18 months to 2 years, but the reality is 6 months to a year, depending on their availability. So if you have a facility that has a lot of open rooms, if they want to fill them, they'll take someone a little less. If they are full, they'll pay a good wait list, and it's 2 years long. So that's all part of the planning when you're saying, okay, we need to talk to someone or start thinking that might be. But it's always good to touch base with someone, with an attorney or anyone, professional early on. This way you get your plan in place, you can protect some assets if possible, or set up winter care insurance, those kind of things. But then by the time your money starts to dwindle or you expect it to dwindle, just touch base. I tell people all the time, you call me, it's okay, we talk for an hour. You call me in a year and a half. It's too much money. And I tell them, do this in the next 18 months. Make sure you keep track of all these things. And a brother and sister, who were wonderful. They called me, we had a 2-hour phone conference. They were younger, is that we know this is coming. My mother has early dementia. We have enough money together for 4 years, but we want to have everything ready for Medicaid. So we talk about how I should thought this year to keep track of the records, what I wanted them to track and record, how not to miss funds and how to pay for certain things. So I know when they call me in 4 years, it's going to be a beautiful thing because they already know what they have to do. And they'll be in tears.
And it's such a relief. It's such a burden lifted, you know. And the funny thing is that I found that, you know, a lot of aging people, especially they feel like they don't want to talk about this stuff with their kids because they don't want to burden them. But the real burden happens when you don't talk about it. Yeah. So, you know, and look, it's a hard conversation for most people. Look, it stinks, you know, because you're talking about unpleasant things. But once you do, it's like, it's really liberating. It's the most loving thing that you can do for the people in your life and yourself. You know, you're taking really good care of yourself, knowing that all this stuff is addressed, and you don't have to worry about it, and you know who to call if something happens to you. And they know what you want. They're not going to run around like a nut because they don't know where the papers are or what you want. Yeah.
I have a question on long-term care policies. I've heard nightmares about people who bought policies, paid for years, and then the insurance company changes the policy on them. Or so, do you recommend? I was talking to somebody at a club that I belong to, and he was saying he signed up for long-term care at 59, I think. And I kind of always thought that you had to, you know, that it would be extremely expensive at that point. Just curious as to what your thoughts are regarding long-term care.
Yeah. Okay.
Insurance.
Yeah. I know a lot about this area, and traditional long-term care insurance is going away. Okay. The provider that my parents used, Genworth, they no longer sell long-term care insurance. You know why?
It's too
It's
expensive.
expensive. They didn't price it right. They built the model all wrong. They assumed that everybody was going to like buy the insurance and then let it lapse. And they'd be like, oh. Well, guess what? People were not letting their policies lapse, and they were using them. My mother's long-term care story is the best long-term care story in the world. Because, first of all, she and my father both had Genworth, right? My dad got sick, and that was the first time I even learned about long-term care insurance. And I was like, what is this? So I filed a claim for him, and I had him evaluated. They send a nurse in, and they see if it's like legitimate, if he qualifies, and they're like, oh yeah, he did. But then the first thing you encounter is the elimination period. What's the elimination period? This is the time during which you are expected to self-pay for the services. So my parents had a 100-day elimination period. During the elimination period, they would pay for in-home caregivers. I call somebody out to help take care of my dad. My father threw her out. I was mortified, but then I found out that's very typical. But what happened? My father's situation was really accelerated because he was so sick, and I had my parents living with me, and my father, as I mentioned before, was like hallucinating constantly, and he would do things in his sleep, and sleeping in the same bed with my mother, he actually hurt her. He didn't mean to, but he didn't know what he was doing, and she'd wake up with bruises on her arm because she was like. So, and I didn't have another bed, so we actually said, let's go to an assisted living where you guys can have separate bedrooms in the same apartment and you can be together. And so we rushed it, and they got into the apartment, and my father was gone within 3 months. and he never got to use his long-term care policy. So fast forward to 2011, my mother's living with me. She has a psychotic break. She's losing her mind. Now I know how to start a claim. I started a claim, and the attorney that I was working with at the time actually chastised me for starting it too soon. You're going to run out of money. What's it there for? So I started her claim. I started having in-home caregivers, and it was good because I worked in my home. I needed to be able to focus, and I knew that she was being cared for. She had somebody to talk to, somebody to help her change the channel. Then her situation changed. She went from my home to assisted living. She had a major healthcare crisis where she landed in a hospital for a couple of weeks. Then she went to rehab. She became profoundly psychotic. And she got thrown out of rehab for threatening people with knives. So she went to a psychiatric hospital for several weeks until they figured out what recipe of psychotropic drugs they could give her to calm her down so she could be returned to the social setting. And then she went back to assisted, and then she kept trying to run away. So they had me hire caregivers to make sure that she didn't run away or hurt any of the other residents. And I wound up moving her to a group home, which was a smaller setting where she was less paranoid, where she got really good hands-on help. And while all this was happening, I was filing my claims to long-term care, and they weren't paying. Why? Because the places that she went, which were not covered by long-term care but were covered by Medicare, I didn't send them. I only sent them the stuff that pertained to them. They said, well, we need to know where she was. And they didn't tell me this. They just kept researching. They needed to know the complete chain of residency. So I had to give them all that paperwork. It took 7 months to straighten out. And they finally started paying me. And then we got into a groove, and then she got moved to another group home in the same system, and then they stopped paying me again. Because it was a different, even though they were the same chain, with the same qualifications, I had to recertify. So what I'm trying to get through, you guys, is that filing a long-term care claim is extremely tedious, and you have to have the tenacity of a bulldog to get it done. So, I'm the bulldog. So I got the paperwork done, got the starting payments again. Now, my mom had a 4-year policy, and she's now in year 5. And I've got her in this group home, and she's getting really good care, but she's getting sicker. And then she's on, she had a major health crisis again, and now she's on hospice in the group home. And I'm getting notices from Genworth, your benefit's running out, you better figure out something. So, and I'm wondering, like, why my mom is still alive, because she was on hospice. And on April 14th, I got the text message from the hospice nurse. Your mom is becoming active, I don't expect to see her again. And I called her and I said, I thought she was getting violent, because she had rallied so many times, I thought she rallied and was getting violent again. And she said, no, honey, she's actively transitioning to death. And I gave her her morphine shot. She should be gone by tomorrow. Oh, okay. And I looked at my phone, and I realized it was April 14th. It was my parents' 64th wedding anniversary. Mm-hmm. So I got my husband, and we went down to the home. I called my brother, I told him what was going on, to say goodbye to Mom. And she was comfortable. She wasn't, she was breathing comfortably sleeping. She wasn't going to go anywhere anytime soon. And I just got that she didn't want anyone to be there when she finally passed. So, and I should mention that April 14th is also my brother and sister-in-law's wedding anniversary. So I told my brother, I said, take your wife out to dinner, try to, have as nice a time as you can, and I'll call you when. And then my husband and I went to a Chinese restaurant. And it was a place where we'd taken Mom and she really liked. And, we toasted Mom and when we got the bill, I got my fortune cookie and I opened it with him and said, leave all your old troubles behind tonight. And I said, wow, how did you do that? And then I went home, and at 9:02 my phone rang, and they said, we're done. And I said, oh wow, okay. And I called the funeral home, so I had everything paid for. I called, and then Mount Sinai Hospital called me because I donated my mom's brain to science. So they were going to pick her up first, take her brain, deliver Mom's body to the funeral. And I slept really good that night, and I woke up in the morning and I was checking messages and I was looking at some financial stuff, and I saw that Genworth had released the last of Mom's money, $472, the last of the money in her long-term care policy, and it hit her account on the 15th. So I realized then and there that my father was not going to let my mother pass until she exhausted her policy, and she did.
So he didn't use any of this.
He didn't use any of this. He was mightily pissed off, but
He was
proud of her. That's it. And he came for her on their anniversary and said, come on, kid, get in the limo, we're going home. So when I say I gave my mother a good death, I'm here to tell you that I have a great deal of peace about it, because to me, that was the sign. It did it right. So, look, long-term care insurance, the idea was a great one, but there are other ways of doing long-term care that are better than traditional long-term care insurance. And I've done a great deal of research, and I have found a number of solutions that are better than traditional. And if you would like to talk to me about it, I'd be happy to. I work with some people who are just extraordinary, and they have knowledge of the full universe of long-term care products, and I'm happy to share those with you. There are some products that I like better than others, but I'm product agnostic. I want to find the best solution for my clients, and I have what I think works for me. And I'll tell you something else. My husband and I have a Genworth policy, and I got the increase this year. And I don't have to take it because I have something else in it. And I can say, thanks, Genworth, that was nice of you, goodbye.
You can also be turned down.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And if you have a condition that may lead to you needing custodial care, you may get turned down. Absolutely. But
A history of dementia in your family or something like that?
no, not necessarily, because there's no direct causal link. So it's who you are and what your condition is right now. So I wouldn't be concerned with that. I'm a child of two parents who succumbed to dementia, but I'm okay. And I actually participated in a study where they took my genetic material and determined that I do not have the Alzheimer's gene, which is really cool. I have friends who are like, you wanted to know? Yeah, I want to know. And my mom had Alzheimer's. I had it confirmed because Mount Sinai analyzed her brain, and that's the only way to determine it definitively. Even now, 2017, they have to analyze, they have to do an autopsy to establish which kind of dementia a person had. Now, they confirmed Alzheimer's. That doesn't mean she didn't have other dementias. It just means that she definitively did have Alzheimer's disease. The presence of Alzheimer's disease was confirmed in her brain. So my mom could very well have had she had a lot of other things wrong. And she did have another condition which often causes a type of dementia. So,
Regarding hospice, how soon does hospice, traditionally, how soon do they come in to this situation when the person is close to death? 3 months, 6 months?
they stage it.
There's criteria for it.
Yeah, there's a staging process. They look at the person's condition and a nurse will estimate. Excuse me. I don't love my water bottle before. They stage the person. And the nurse will estimate how long they think the person has. When my mother was staged for hospice, the nurse said she's going to have a couple of weeks. 8 months. Excuse me. So, so the idea behind hospice, though, is that you have 6 months. And they'll extend it. And by the way, Medicare pays for hospice. And the idea is palliative care. It's creating an environment where the patient has no pain. At the same time, you cannot do anything to improve their health. So the patient comes off of all of their medications. There can be no more physical therapy. You can't do anything that would prolong their life or enhance their life. All you can do is manage their pain. That's the goal of hospice. And they also support the family, which is actually a very lovely thing because they have grief counseling. They have they will provide spiritual counseling. So I had a chaplain who came in and asked, what my mother liked, and was she religious? Like neither of my parents was religious. But he asked, what does she like, and does she like to read? I said, she loves music. And, I gave him some ideas for the period of, music that she liked and, what she was into. And he would come with a boombox and he'd play music for her. So she had other people coming in who were, occupying her time in pleasant ways, and it's a service that's covered by Medicare. But it's really interesting. It's a very it's a lovely service that. Oh, thank you so much. So so hospice is a really valuable service that and a lot of people misunderstand it. I worked with a woman who didn't want to bring hospice in because she thought she was killing her parents. No, that's not what it's about. It's and this is what's really what's very counterintuitive about hospice. Once somebody goes on hospice, they very often rarely leave down because once you take them off all their medications, their body's like, oh, hey, okay, I can do this now. Because there's a lot of the medications that somebody's on towards the end of their life can be like having a lot of complications that you're not even aware of. So, very often people snap back and they do have a rebound and they, because it also gives them an opportunity to have closure with their families and, right?
I had a client that was on hospice for a year and a half. And he told me, he had a big facility in months. And I said to him, how much of a facility? And even through the process, he didn't want to give me everything because he figured, she lasted another 6 months after I got on Medicaid. He said, do you believe my mother? But he called me. I said, really? I thought she was.
Is hospice a county or is it paid by the county or the state?
Well, there's private hospice companies in Medicare reimburses.
And you can use a hospice facility where you pay like the Marie Claire, very nice facility, and we pay.
Harder to get into and restricted.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I thought hospice came into your home.
Well, it does. It does.
But you can get hospice at a hospital or nursing.
Yeah, there are facilities also.
They have a lot of restrictions about patients they continue, and also reading what's most convenient to help people.
Yeah, and in my mom's case, I had, they came to her group home. So, you know, she was so in addition to all the caregivers she had at the group home, she also had the additional support of the hospice team. So there's a nurse assigned to the case who takes their vitals and makes recommendations, you know, how to make the person more comfortable. A chaplain who provides, as I said, my mom was like, loved music, so he would play music for her. She reading the Bible was not going to cut it for us, you know, but she loved music.
So it's a team approach, it's not just
yes,
one person.
Right, yeah, there's several people, and there's a case manager who interacts with family, and there's a geriatric care manager who puts it all together. And then they give you grief counseling afterwards. So, you know, after my mom passed, you know, the hospice people were calling me, how you doing? I was fine, it was peaceful. You know, I'd done so much of my grieving for my mother over the course of the 5 years I was taking care of her. And this many versions of my life. But yeah, it's a great service and it's very misunderstood. Well, it's not actually 2:15. So, all right. Guys, it's been a real sincere pleasure. I hope that Thank you, Antoniette, for joining me today. Thanks for watching, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. And to all the professionals at Grand Family Planning, thank you guys for participating. And I hope you guys will do the questionnaire so we can make this as good an experience as possible for future students. And if we can help you in any way in the future, you know, we are all professionals and we would love to help you with your concerns and help you to protect yourselves and your families. So thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanksgiving to everybody.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. And incidentally, I